Hello and welcome to Audrey the Icon Adventures. I'm Connie.
And I'm Daryl.
And this is Audrey the Icon.
Hello. Just got home from our New Year's trip away. Did about 500 kilometres of towing. And I just wanted to share some of the things that I learnt during those. We had 4 sessions at 150 kilometres on a couple of days. One was 130, one was about 90. No smooth, lovely highway in all of that. It was all country road, country highway, steep, windy mountain road, steep, windy, rutted dirt road. So a nice variety of road for us to go and get used to rocky towing Audrey. I'll just pan around here a little bit and you should see Audrey still hooked up back there. I'm poked into the toy room. What I wanted to do just here was to do some simple measurements as to what happens when we put the weight of Audrey's hitch under the tow bar. How does Rocky move? How much he comes up on the front, how much he goes down in the bum, and then also measure the actual hitch weight for Audrey. And we might even be able to have a look at the scales inside Rocky on that lovely big 12-inch display and see what that tells us. I know it doesn't give us an exact number, it's just meant to be a ballpark informational guide. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to weigh all 4 corners. You may see just here, I've got a piece of tape on the guard with a line on it. So I've got one of those on each of the guards. They just purely, how much does this one move? How much does that one move? Just to give us some ballpark ideas. Also measuring to the top surface of the tongue that we're using. I've taken a measurement for where the drawbar for Audrey is as well. So when we put her on the scales, we can get her very close to that, just to make sure that we're weighing quite accurately as to how she sits right at this moment. So here I go. I'll grab the tape and run around and do all those measurements now. I haven't weighed the hitch yet. So as we sit all connected up, the height I've got for the drawbar, I've got a line on there, it's 592 mil. The top of the tongue that we're using is 453 millimeters. The left front is 1026, the left rear 933, the right front 1031, and the right rear 916. What I'll do now is pause this video while I go and unhitch Audrey. I'm just literally going to lift her directly off and then come back to you and we'll do the 5 measurements on Rocky and we'll just see how much he moves. Unhitched Audrey, just lifted her straight up, didn't move Rocky, just went around and did the 5 measurements. So the tongue height was 453. is now 480. The left front was 1026, is now 1020. The right front was 1031, now 1025. So the front has come down about 6 millimeters each side. The left rear was 933, now 948. And the right rear was 916, now 931. So the rear on both sides has come up about 15 millimeters. I'm going to move Rocky forwards now, bring Audrey back down to the height of 592 as per my line, and we're going to get a weight underneath the DO35 coupling there and see exactly how much weight was on the hitch that caused that amount of movement in the suspension front to rear. Rocky's moved forward and I've got Audrey all set up on the scale. Let's go and have a look what's going on. Here we are. You can see still got the chains hooked up and breakaway. Those sorts of things are going to be very inconsequential for what we're doing here, because this is just to give you an idea of what's going on. There's no weight on that little lump of wood at the moment. Perhaps you can see there that the scales are zeroed. I'm going to wind the jockey wheel so it goes light, and then we'll have another look at the scales and see what it tells us. Total 447 pounds. Let's go and grab the phone, get the calculator out and see what 447 pounds converts to. 447 pounds divided by 2.2 to get us into kilos. About 203 kilos were on the hitch. That 203 kilos is what made the front come up, I would say 6 millimeters, and the rear go down about 15 millimeters. Now, tyre pressures might be something you think of. Okay, tyres are warm because I've just driven 154 kilometres. This morning when they were cold, before heading off, the fronts were 38, the rears were 44. During the drive, they go up 3 to 4 pounds-ish. All right. So that gives you a bit of an idea of what happens when we put 203 on the hitch. Typically, I'd say 200 kilos on the hitch weight for maybe 2.1 tonne. That's pretty close. Everybody would love to have 10%. The ballpark that we all aim for is 8 to 12% on the hitch. And at the moment, 200 compared, we're just under that 10% by only a little bit, nowhere near 8%, that's for sure. He towed really well on all that rough country goat track that I was on this morning. Used cruise control for a little bit of it, with it set on 104. The GPS showed that we were doing 100. All the roughness, dealt with it, no issue. The hilly stuff, I had it in tow haul mode, and most of the trip sat in 9th gear. There was one occasion where I came to the bottom of a hill and cruised along the flat there. He'd managed to get up into 10th gear. He wasn't labouring, he was just ticking along nicely at 100, at that 104. As soon as we start going up the rise on the other side, he'd start easing back the gears, depending on the steepness of the hill, for him to maintain that speed, or for most of the drive I was in control. I had the cruise control off. I'd still like to sit on that 100 to 104, put the foot down a little bit just to keep the speed going up the hill. Typically he'd end up back in about 7th gear, and most of the drive he sat in 9th gear. It was only when the hill was a bit longer or we got held up by slower traffic, he'd come back into a lower gear. There was one occasion where we overtook, not having a dig here, this is just the way it worked out. There was a couple of 79s towing a couple of loads. One had a decent sized van on board, I guess somewhere around 20, 22 footer. And the other one was just towing a box trailer with some sort of like side-by-side ATV on it. And they chose to stay in the left-hand lane. I was down to about 80 kilometres an hour as we're going up there in the 100 zone. Put the foot down, he dropped back a gear, he accelerated, not hard. There was no pushing you back in your seat, oh yeah, I can feel him pulling. It's just like, he was accelerating a bit, and I just let him do his thing because, hey, it's only 154 kilowatts under the bonnet. Yeah, it's got the 600 newton meters that help get us going, and then after that the revs were building a bit and it was getting pointless. At no point that I can remember have I even floored the accelerator in Rocky yet. I found no need to for the style of driving we do, which is cruise along at the speed limit, and when we get to an overtaking lane, we get over into the left-hand lane and let everybody else go past as best we can. We definitely don't speed up when we get into the overtaking lane unless we're overtaking. The rest of the time we just sit there. I'll even back off a little bit. If it's a 100 zone, I'll ease off to 90 just to make it a little easier for those other vehicles that are behind us to get past. Anyway, that's my driving technique. I know that the truck drivers out there appreciate it. Give them a yell on the radio. Yeah mate, you pull out, I'll ease off. They'll go past, give us a thank you and a flash of the blinkers. So little things like that when you're towing. I say, we don't tow heavy. I don't anticipate we'll ever tow heavy. Yes, he's allowed to tow 4.5 tonne. Rocky will never be towing 4.5 tonne. Audrey can weigh 2.3 when she's full. He tows her very nicely. Monday last week, we were driving in an 80 zone. There was quite a few 30 and 40 bands. It's quite steep. It was quite a long climb. You probably spend, I'm guessing, 4 to 5 minutes without looking at the data of consistent climbing to get from the first 40 kilometre an hour hairpin bend until you get to the top of the hill and peak out. You do climb a few hundred meters in altitude in that time as well. The road's a bit rough. So we just sat on 60, eased off a little bit for the 30 bends. He'd seem to be able to do around that 60 mark, around the 40 bends, and you could squeeze your foot down a bit and he'd pull. You may be wondering what the oil temperature did. Yes, we have it displayed. I've actually asked my dealer to find out what the increments are in temperature wise, because yes, they move around quite a lot, and without knowing what they are, it's impossible to say it moved 1 degree or 10 degrees. Being oil changes temperature slowly and loses temperature slowly just because of the viscosity and what it is. Seeing a lot of movement on the gauge, to me, my guess, and as I say, I really hope to find out in the near future the actual numbers, my guess is that each of those little bars might only be 1/4 of a degree, because when approaching a hill and climbing, they might go up 6 bars fairly quickly, maybe 7 or 8, and then crest the hill and go down the other side and very quickly lose those 7 or 8 above the middle mark, like where the little handle is for the oil pot, and then come sort of 6 or 7 down the other way below that. So you might get a grand total of 15 to 20 bar movements, yet it's all in the space of only a couple of minutes. So I wouldn't think the oil temperature is able to ramp up that fast and then also ramp down that fast. That's why my guess is it's literally only a few degrees. He's hoping that the Ford dealer can find out the actual answer for us, and I'll share that with you later on when I know, which hopefully will be in the next few weeks. Anyway, hopefully our little 500 kilometres-ish of towing and what we've learnt so far might help you understand a little bit what happens here, what happens when you put some load on the hitch, what do we say? Just over 200 kilos on the hitch, about 6 millimetres up, and about 15 millimetres down at the back. The hitch itself moved about 27 millimetres. To me, it has to. It's just natural physics, you know. We're putting some weight back there. It's right at the back, well behind the axle. We're still well within any sort of axle loadings. As I say, when we're driving down the road in Rocky with just Connie and myself on board and the gear that we've got in the back at the moment, we're a bit over 3,500 kilos. And hooking up Audrey makes us a bit over 3,700 kilos today. On the way out, she was heavier on the nose. I think she was up somewhere in that 230-ish kilo mark for on the way, maybe even a little more with the food and the water, etc. in the front of her. So that would have taken us up to, what's that? Let's call it 3,800 kilos as a round number. So well under his GVM, and combined well safe in their GCM. Hope that helps a few of you understand what you can do with a Super Duty, even though it's only a small load. I like to think most people are only going to be towing small loads anywhere from our 2.3 tonne up to about 3.5. For those of you that want to go 4.5, don't be planning on putting much in the tray, and especially if you've got a dual cab. I think a dual cab is 50 to 100 kilos heavier. Check the spec sheet, and if that's the case, our 550-ish kilos that we've got to work with Audrey and all the rest of it, it comes down pretty quick. So yeah, just be mindful of that. Over 3,200 kilometres so far. He had his 3,000 service yesterday. No issues. Everything's going great. No warning lights, no error codes. It's just been literally go out, jump in, push the button, let him warm up for a minute, and then off we go. When I'm towing, I was tow nice and gentle to start with, typically in suburbia, so we build a little bit of heat and everything. By the time we get out onto the open road, he's got that bit of warmth, and off we go. Everything just goes so well. Audrey is on the hitch at the moment, all hooked up, and we can see where the green line is there. And that plus 100 is allowing for 100 kilos of external load not being in the vehicle at the moment, which is fine. So we can see where it is there. It's a little bit past halfway from when it starts tapering in. I'm going to go and lift Audrey off now and get an idea of what that says. With Audrey off the scales, you can now see where the green tapers in. That has come down. This is really the first time I've had a good play off these scales. Anyway, we can see we're well in the green by far, and that measured 203 kilos moved the green bar as much as it did. Onboard scales are not intended for trade measurement. Okay, scales reset to 0, so we can see the 0 in the middle of the screen. Let's go and change Audrey to not be hitched on and see what happens. There we go. Audrey's all hitched up. We can see 0 is nearly at the bottom now. It was in the middle of the screen. Roughly by these scales, somewhere between 150 and 175 load went on. We know that we measured it at 203. So anyway, as it says at the beginning, it's not to tell you the exact number, and right down the bottom in big letters says not for commercial use. Anyway, it's a good guide, and maybe it's out by 30-ish kilos. I'm not going to bitch about that when you got 4.5 tonne to play with all up and 1,885 kilos of potential. There we go. That's a little bit of a play with the onboard scales. Happy travels. Enjoy.